She touched the blind Duke of Ravensmere's face on the 3rd minute of their acquaintance, and the housekeeper, 2 paces behind her, made a sound like a woman watching a vase fall. The study had a tall window, opened to a May afternoon, and the Duke stood between the window and a writing desk, with his hands flat on the leather. He did not turn when the door opened. He did not turn when the housekeeper said the new reader had arrived. He turned only when she crossed the carpet and stopped within arm's reach, and even then he turned only halfway, the scar over his left brow catching the light in a thin, pale arc. His eyes were the colour of a frozen lake, a blue that had been clouded by something older than grief. "You may sit, Mrs. Ashbourne," he said. His voice was lower than she had imagined from his sister's letters, and quieter. "There is a chair near the desk." She did not sit. She did not answer. She set down the small leather case she carried, lifted both her hands, and placed them on either side of his face. He went still, the way a horse goes still when a stranger touches its bridle for the first time, not flinching, calculating. "Madam," he said. "You have a fresh tear in the white of the right eye," she said. Her thumbs were just beneath his cheekbones, her palms over the line of his jaw. He had shaved sometime in the last hour. The soap had been bergamot. "It is at the 11 o'clock position, 3 days old, perhaps 4. You walked into a door frame." "I did not walk into a door frame." "You did. You shifted your shoulder and bruised the soft part of your eye. The skin is still warm." She turned his face a fraction. "And the clouding of the lens is dense in the center and thin at the edges, which means you can still see light, possibly shapes against light if it is bright enough." He had not breathed since she touched him. He breathed now, once, quietly. "Who sent you?" "Your sister, Lady Honoria. She wrote on the 7th of April. She required a reader of correspondence and a discreet companion to the dowager duchess. I was recommended by Mrs. Carew of Bath." Her hands had not left his face. "She did not mention your eyes. I thought she should have." His left hand came up and closed around her wrist. The grip was not punishing. It was deliberate. He had found her by sound and touch in the space of half a heartbeat. The width of his fingers ran from the base of her thumb to the knot of her wrist bone, and the heat of his palm sank through her sleeve. He could have lifted her off the floor with one arm. He chose, instead, to hold her where she was. "Mrs. Ashbourne." "Your Grace." "You are touching the face of a Duke of England without invitation." "Yes." "Why?" She did not move. Her thumbs were still on his cheekbones. The May light through the open window caught the dust motes between them and made them gold. "Because I have seen this before," she said quietly, "and I know what to look for." His grip on her wrist tightened, not from anger, from something else. He drew a single, slow breath, and when he spoke, the words came out before he could shape them. Raw, unguarded, half a question and half a vow, from a man who had been alone in the dark for 3 years and had just been touched by a stranger who refused to be afraid of him. "You're mine," he said. He heard the words leave him, and the colour rose under her hands. "Get out," he said, in an entirely different voice. "Please." She removed her hands from his face. She did not remove her hands quickly, and she did not remove them with apology. She lowered them as a person lowers a candle one is no longer using, fully, deliberately, without spilling. "I shall be in the library, reading your correspondence," she said. "Your sister's instructions were that I begin today." She picked up her leather case. The housekeeper by the door had stopped breathing some time ago, and now resumed with a small, tight inhalation. Selina Ashbourne walked across the carpet, around the housekeeper, and out into the hall. The Duke remained where he was, his hands still half closed around the air where her wrist had been, listening to her boots on the stone of the corridor until the last sound of her was gone. Then he sat down. Not in the chair near the desk, on the floor beside it, his back against the wood, both hands open in his lap as though they had been holding something he had not been permitted to keep. He did not move for a long time. In the library, Selina set her leather case on the table beneath the south window and did not allow her hands to shake. The library was a long room, vaulted, smelling of vellum and beeswax and the faint resin of pine. A fire had been laid but not lit. A reading stand with a stack of unopened letters waited in the center. Beside the stand, set out as though for inspection, was a small silver tray with a decanter of water, a single glass, and a carved chess piece, a white queen, placed on its side. She picked the queen up. It was old ivory, chipped at the crown. She turned it in her fingers and set it upright. Then she opened her case and took out a folded square of black silk, a small bottle stoppered with cork and sealed with red wax, and a single sheet of paper, closely written in her late father's hand. She laid the three objects in a row. She looked at them. She looked at her hands, which were not quite steady. "You will do this properly," she said aloud, to herself, "or you will not do it at all." She put the silk and the bottle and the paper away. She closed the case. For a long moment, she stood with both hands on the lid of the case and let her shoulders lower deliberately, the way her father had taught her to do before a difficult procedure. First the right shoulder, then the left, then the long muscle along the spine, vertebra by vertebra. He had called it the surgeon's quiet. He had said it was the only honest gift a doctor could give a patient. The gift of arriving in the room without bringing his own fear into it. She had practiced the surgeon's quiet for 2 years in her father's Bedford Square study after his books had been packed away. She had practiced it again on a low chair in Edinburgh, in Dr. McAllister's laboratory, before the third trial on the glassblower from Newcastle, whose left eye had recovered and whose right eye had not. She had practiced it that morning on the mail coach between Tunbridge and Tunbridge Wells, with the blind of the carriage drawn against the early light. She practiced it now, in the long library at Ravensmere, with the smell of vellum and beeswax in her hair, and the May afternoon reddening on the south lawn beyond the pinned cloth at the window. By the time her shoulders had finished lowering, she could feel her own pulse slow to a count she could trust, and her hands, when she lifted them from the case, were no longer shaking. She walked to the reading stand, took the topmost letter from the stack, and broke its seal. She had 3 days, by her father's old calculation, before the Duke's right eye fully scarred. 3 days to decide whether she had come to Ravensmere to atone for what her father had done to him, or to finish what her father had not lived to repair. She read the first letter aloud to the empty room, to teach her voice the shape of the work. It was about Parliament. By the time the bell rang for the dressing hour, she had read 7 letters and made notes on each in a small green notebook. 3 of the 7 concerned a vote on the enclosure of common lands in Sussex on the 2nd Tuesday of June. 2 concerned the Duke's tenants, a missing rent roll, a flooded mill. 2 were from Lord Cassian Hawksmere, the Duke's cousin, written from London in a hand that climbed and crowded the page. The first of Lord Cassian's letters expressed concern for dear Adrian's continued strain. The second proposed, with elaborate solicitude, that Lord Cassian assume the proxy vote on the enclosure bill, to spare your grace the burden of the chamber. Selina set down the second of Cassian's letters. She read the line about the proxy a second time. A door opened at the far end of the library. She did not turn at once. Lady Honoria Hawksmere was 31 years old, dark-haired like her brother, and dressed in a riding habit of indigo wool that she had clearly come straight from the stables in. She did not stop on the threshold, the way visitors stopped. She came down the long room as a person comes home. "You are here," she said. "Good." Selina rose. "Lady Honoria." She kept her shoulders down the way her father had taught her. "Sit. You have been here 3 hours. My brother has not yet thrown anything." Honoria's mouth lifted at one corner. "That is more than I dared hope for." What have you been reading? His correspondence. All of it. 7 letters. He has more. The clock on the mantel ticked through the silence. He has, at last count, 104. They are on the second shelf of the case behind you. Some of them are nearly 2 years old. Honoria's eyes, green where her brother's were the colour of frozen water, went to the stack on the stand. Tell me about the 2 from my cousin. Selina told her. Honoria listened without interrupting. When Selina described the proxy proposal, Honoria's hand closed on the back of the nearest chair, the way a hand closes on a railing in a storm. He wrote to my brother 3 times last winter with the same offer. Adrian did not answer. Cassian has begun to write as if Adrian is not capable of answering. Honoria turned and looked out the south window. The light was reddening on the lawn. Mrs. Ashbourne, may I speak plainly? Please. His breath was steady. Her breath was steadier. My brother is not mad. He is not weak. He is blind. And he has been alone for 3 years. And he has been told 100 times by physicians and friends and our cousin that there is nothing more to be done for his eyes. He has come to believe them. I do not. I require a reader, because Parliament sits in 2 weeks, and my brother must take his seat. I require a companion, because the Dowager Duchess is in residence, and is also of the opinion that he is broken. She turned back. I do not require a nurse. He will not tolerate one. Are we agreed? We are agreed. She heard, somewhere down the long corridor, a door close very softly. Good. Honoria walked closer. She stopped at the table and looked down at the leather case. What is in the case? Books, pens, ink, a pair of spectacles I do not need any longer. And your father's papers. The library was very quiet. The fire had not been lit. The dust drifted gold in the last red light. My father's papers, Selina said. I know who your father was, Mrs. Ashbourne. I have known since the morning your letter arrived. Mrs. Carew did not lie about your skill or your discretion, but she did not tell me your maiden name. I asked. She answered. Honoria's voice did not rise. Dr. Henry Marwick of London, the surgeon who attempted my brother's eyes 3 years ago, the man whose experimental procedure failed, the man who, she paused, did not long survive his failure. Yes. You are his daughter. I am his daughter. Why are you in my library, Mrs. Ashbourne? Selina did not look away. Because my father left a record of what he did, and what he believed had gone wrong, and what, in the last weeks of his life, he believed might still be done to repair it. I have read every page of that record. I have written to 2 surgeons in Edinburgh. I have practiced the procedure twice in the laboratory of Dr. McAllister, who was my father's friend. I came to your door because I would rather your brother think me a thief than spend another year believing nothing more can be done. Honoria did not speak for several seconds. Her hand had not left the back of the chair. You touched his face? I did. Within 5 minutes of meeting him? Within 3. And he said? Selina opened her mouth. She closed it. What did he say to you, Mrs. Ashbourne? He said, Selina answered, very evenly, that I was touching the face of a Duke of England without invitation. Honoria looked at her for a long moment. Then she lifted the white ivory queen from the chessboard on a side table. There was a chess set there too, Selina now saw, and set it gently on the reading stand beside the letters. He has not spoken aloud to a stranger in 7 months. That is what the Dowager will tell you tonight, and she will be correct. Whatever he said to you, you will keep to yourself for the present. And so shall I. She turned for the door. Dinner is at 8. The Dowager will examine you. My brother will not be at table. He never is. Try the salmon. Good night, Mrs. Ashbourne. Good night, my lady. At the door, Honoria paused. "Mrs. Ashbourne." "Yes?" "If you came here to repair my brother, I shall help you. If you came here to be punished for what your father did, I shall send you home in the morning. Decide tonight which of the two you came for. He has had quite enough of penance done at his expense." She closed the door behind her. Selina sat down in the chair by the reading stand, put both hands flat on the table, the way she had seen the Duke put them flat on his desk an hour earlier, and breathed out. The table was warm under her palms, where the south light had been resting all afternoon. She could feel the grain of the oak under her thumbs, an old grain, sanded by generations of housemaids and oiled once a year. The pinned cloth at the window had been put up by the housekeeper that morning to keep the light from fading the spines on the south wall. Selina had read of the practice in a letter from a London bookseller and recognized it now. Someone in this house had been protecting these books for a long time. Someone in this house had been protecting more than the books. She thought of Honoria's hand on the back of the chair, the flat refusal in her voice, the absolute absence of negotiation in the sentence, "shall send you home in the morning." There was a kind of love that looked from the outside very like cruelty, and a kind of cruelty that looked very like love. And she had learned, at her father's bedside in Bedford Square in his last weeks, how to tell the two apart. Honoria Hawksmere was the first one. The dowager, Selina suspected, was a more complicated case. The Duke himself she could not yet read. She had touched his face for fewer than 30 seconds, and had heard him say 2 words in a voice she could not classify, and she had not yet decided whether the small grip on her wrist had been a warning or a request she was not yet permitted to understand. She drew the green notebook toward her across the warm wood. She turned to a fresh page. At the top of the page she wrote, in her father's own handwriting, which she had unconsciously copied from the age of 9, Day 1. Then she wrote beneath that, "He still has the right pupil." The pupil reacted to the candle in the corridor. She underlined the sentence twice, closed the notebook, and laid her cheek against the cool leather of the cover for the count of 10. When she sat up, the south light had moved an inch along the cloth, and the housekeeper was standing in the doorway with a tray of bread and cheese and a small pot of cold beef and a glass of small ale, looking at her with the careful, suspended expression of a servant who has not yet decided which mistress she serves. "Mrs. Henning." "Mrs. Ashbourne." "Thank you. Please tell cook that I shall not require dinner." "Her Grace was particular, ma'am." "Her Grace has, I believe, been particular for 3 years. She is permitted a holiday this evening. Sit a moment, Mrs. Henning, if you can spare it." The housekeeper, after the smallest hesitation, set down the tray and sat. She was a woman of about 45, in dark grey serge, with the broad, capable hands of someone who had run great houses since she was 19. She did not put her hands in her lap. She put them on her knees, palms flat, the way a soldier sits on a bench at parade. "Mrs. Henning." "Ma'am." "You were standing in the study door this afternoon when I greeted His Grace." The pinned cloth at the window stirred once and was still. "Yes, ma'am." "You made a sound." "I did not, ma'am." "You did. It was the small sound a person makes when they are watching something they cannot stop, and would not have permitted if they had been quicker. I am not telling you off, Mrs. Henning. I am asking. You have been at Ravensmere how long?" 11 years, ma'am, since His Grace was a young man." "And His Grace, in those 11 years?" "Has been the kindest master I have served, ma'am, before and after." "And in the 3 years since?" The housekeeper's mouth moved a little. She did not answer at once. She looked at the south window. The cloth moved slightly in the late afternoon air. "He has been in this house, ma'am. He has been in this house in his own apartments, and in this library, and at the long table, and on the south path to the lake, when the morning is bright enough that he can find it with his cane. He has been in this house. He has not been anywhere else. He has not had visitors except Dr. Pruitt, the once, and Lord Cassian, twice a year. He has not been to London. He has not been to a ball. He has not had— I shall speak plainly, ma'am, since you ask— a kind hand laid upon him by anyone in this house, who was not his sister or his mother, until this afternoon. He tilted his face a fraction further into the May light. Mrs. Henning. Ma'am. Has he eaten today? At noon, ma'am. Cold mutton and bread and small beer. He took half. He will take a tray in his apartments at 7 o'clock, not before. He will take soup, hot bread, the partridge, if there is any from the kitchen, and a glass of the burgundy his father preferred, which Lady Honoria has told me is in the second cellar. He will be told that the tray is sent at the request of the new reader, and the new reader is not asking permission. Will you do that, Mrs. Henning? I shall do that, ma'am. Thank you. Good night. Good night, ma'am. The housekeeper went away. Selina ate the bread and cheese the housekeeper had brought her, drank the small ale to the dregs, and read 4 more letters before the bell rang for the dressing hour. The Dowager Duchess of Ravensmere was 64, white-haired, and dressed in the half-mourning she had worn since her husband's funeral 9 years before. She greeted Selina at the dining-room door by extending one finger and tapping the table plan beside her. You are seated to my right. Thank you, Your Grace. Lady Honoria informs me you read aloud well. I attempt to. We shall see. The Dowager's eyes were the same blue as her son's, but uncrowded by any cloud. They were dry, watchful, and very tired. You will read to me after dinner. You will not read to my son. He does not require it. Of course, Your Grace. He does not require anything. The Dowager's hand on the table did not tremble, but it had the particular stillness of a hand that had once trembled and had been disciplined out of it. He is the 8th Duke of Ravensmere. He requires only that his name continue, which it will in due course, through his cousin. We do not speak of his eyes. We do not speak of London surgeons. We do not speak of the spring of 3 years past. Are we agreed? Her wedding ring on her right hand caught and held the firelight. We are agreed. Then sit. The salmon was excellent. The Dowager spoke through 3 courses about her late husband's roses, the new vicar at Ravensmere village, and the unfortunate vulgarity of the Hawksmere arms as redrawn by the College of Heralds in 1812. She did not once look at the empty chair at the head of the table. Lady Honoria, halfway through the partridge, said, Mamma. Yes, my dear. I have decided to invite Cassian for the long weekend at Whitsun. The Dowager's spoon paused. Have you, indeed? I have. He has written 4 times in the last fortnight to inquire after Adrian's health. It would be uncivil not to invite him to assess it for himself. Quite uncivil, yes. The Dowager set the spoon down. Your brother will not appreciate it. My brother does not wish to be Duke of Ravensmere alone in a house full of women. He wishes to be Duke of Ravensmere as God and the College of Heralds intended. Cassian's visit will remind him of that. The Dowager's eyes flicked once, briefly, to Selina. They were not unkind. They were measuring. As you say, Honoria. As you say. The Dowager lifted her glass. Mrs. Ashbourne, you are silent. Yes, Your Grace. That is more than I expected. Continue. After dinner, Selina read to the Dowager from a volume of sermons by Bishop Hurd. The Dowager listened for 30 minutes, then dismissed her, the way a colonel dismisses a junior officer who has performed adequately on parade. Selina walked the long upstairs corridor to her room. The corridor was lit by sconces every 12 paces. The corridor was empty. She passed the door to the Duke's apartments without slowing her step. 3 doors past his, she slowed. She went back. She stood outside his door for perhaps 10 seconds. Then she lifted her hand, and laid the back of her knuckles against the panel. A gesture, not a knock. The wood was warm. There was a strip of light beneath the door. A voice on the other side, quiet but very clear. "Mrs. Ashbourne." She closed her eyes. "Yes, Your Grace." "Go to bed." "Yes, Your Grace." "Mrs. Ashbourne." "Yes." The silence in the room had a texture, like cool linen against the skin. "In the morning, 9 o'clock, the library. Bring the 7 letters you read today. We shall begin." She did not look down at her own hand. "Yes, Your Grace." "And Mrs. Ashbourne?" "Yes." "I apologize." A long pause. The corridor sconce above her head guttered. She put her hand flat against the door, not knocking, not asking entry, and spoke through the wood. "Your Grace, you apologize for what?" The pause on the other side was longer than hers had been. "For not knowing how to thank you," he said, "for what you did this afternoon." She did not answer at once. When she did, her voice was steady, but it was not the voice she had used at dinner. "Good night, Your Grace." "Good night, Mrs. Ashbourne." She walked the rest of the corridor to her room, closed the door, and stood with her back against it for a long time before she lit her candle. The room she had been given was at the western end of the long upstairs corridor, 2 doors past the Duke's apartments, and 1 door before the head of the back stair the housekeeper had pointed out to her on the way up. It was a large room for a paid companion. It had a window seat with a worn green cushion, a wide, rope-hung bed, a writing desk in pale pine that had been polished within a month, a small dressing table with a candlestick of plain pewter, and a single chair with a back like a shield, upholstered in claret damask. The curtains were drawn. A fire had been laid in the grate. There was a glass of water on the night table, and beside it, a small posy of white lilac and rosemary in a clear bottle. The lilac was new. The rosemary was older and wilting at the bottom. Selina recognized both. Lilac for tomorrow, rosemary for what is remembered. She did not know who in this house had given the order. It was not a task the housekeeper would have undertaken on her own initiative. But she knew, with a small, precise certainty, that it had not been the dowager. She undressed slowly. She did not allow herself to hurry, because hurrying would have been an admission that she was tired in a way she could not afford to be tired. She brushed out her hair to a count of 100 and laid the brush down at exactly 97, so that the last 3 strokes were taken without counting. And then she put on the plain linen nightdress she had brought from Edinburgh, the one with the small darn at the right cuff, which her father had once watched her sew on a winter afternoon when he had been able to see, and climbed into the wide bed. She lay flat on her back, with her hands at her sides, palms open, the way she had been taught at 13 to lie when one wished to fall asleep without thinking. She did not fall asleep without thinking. She thought of the Duke's blind eyes finding her by the air, and the small sound of her shoes on the boards. She thought of the width of his palm closing around her wrist. She thought of his fresh, shaven jaw under her thumb, and the pulse at his temple beneath her palm. She thought, at last, of what he had said before he could shape it. "You're mine." And of what he had said second, which had been, "Get out," and "Please," in that order, and which had been said with the embarrassment of a man who has heard his own honest voice for the first time in 3 years. She turned her head against the pillow once, slowly, as though the small movement could shift the words from one part of her mind to another, where they would be quieter. It did not shift them. She watched the firelight move along the canopy of the bed, listened to the small sounds of the house settling, a board, a clock, a footman somewhere far below, and accepted, finally, that she would not sleep until she had decided which kind of woman she was going to be in the morning. She had 2 choices. She could be the daughter of Dr. Henry Marwick of Bedford Square, present at Ravensmere on her father's behalf, paying his debt with the bottle, the silk, and the paper, and leaving in 7 days when the bottle was empty. Or she could be the woman whose hands had crossed a strange room in a strange house and laid themselves on a strange face without invitation, because the face had asked, in a register the rest of the world had not yet learned to hear. The first woman would survive Ravensmere. The second would not. The second would be ruined, in one way or another, before the year was out. By his cousin, if she succeeded. By her own conscience, if she failed. She knew which woman her father would have wanted her to be. She knew which woman the Duke needed her to be. They were not the same woman. She closed her eyes. She made the surgeons quiet again, beginning at the right shoulder. By the time her shoulders were down and her breath had leveled, she had made her decision. And it was not the decision her father would have wanted. And she did not, in the end, feel very sorry about it. She slept. In the morning at 9 o'clock, the Duke was already in the library when she arrived. He was not behind the desk. He stood at the south window, his hands clasped behind him, dressed in a riding coat of dark indigo that fitted him along the shoulders the way armor fits a man who has worn armor. He did not turn when she came in. He did not pretend he had not heard her. "There are 7 chairs at this table," he said. "Take the one second from the east end." "Yes, Your Grace." "It has the best light." "I noticed." He set his hand flat on the desk between them. "Did you?" He turned, and his blind eyes found her without quite finding her. He had located her by the displacement of air and the small sound her shoes had made on the boards before the carpet absorbed them. "Then we shall begin. Read me the letters in the order they arrived." She read. She read for 3 hours. He listened without moving. When she finished a letter, he said one of 3 things: repeat, set aside, or burn. By the end of the morning, 12 letters were in the burn pile, 4 were in the repeat pile, and 1, the second of his cousin Cassian's letters with the proxy proposal, sat alone on the reading stand between them. "Read the cousin's letter again," he said. She read it. "Once more," he said, slowly, the middle paragraph. She read it again. He stood. He walked the length of the south window with one hand trailing the back of every chair he passed. He stopped at the chess set on the side table. He did not pick up a piece. His hand hovered above the board as if testing the air for heat. "My cousin," he said, "has written me 41 letters in 3 years. This is the 14th in which he has offered to assume my proxy in the chamber. The previous 13 were politer. This one is the first to use the word burden." He turned his head a fraction toward her. "Is that the word you read?" "Burden, yes." Did the hand tremble? The blackbird in the south garden began again, more confidently than before. The hand did not tremble. The hand crowded the page. The word burden was written firmer than the words around it. It had been sat with before it was written. He did not answer. After a moment, he walked back across the room and stopped a yard from her chair. "Mrs. Ashbourne." "Your Grace?" "Yesterday afternoon. You said you knew what to look for. You said you had seen this before." "Yes." "Where?" She set the letter down. She set her pencil beside the letter. She folded her hands in her lap and made them stay there. "In my father's surgery," she said. "Your father?" "Dr. Henry Marwick of Bedford Square." The Duke's blind eyes did not flicker. He did not move. He had heard the name. The name had been in his ear like a struck bell every spring for 3 years. He stood very still in the May light from the south window and let her finish. "He attempted your eyes 3 years ago, Your Grace. The procedure was experimental. It failed. He understood what he had done. He did not. He was not a strong man in the end when he understood. He left papers. I have read them. I came here under my married name and my late husband's letters of recommendation, because I did not believe Lady Honoria would hear me at the door if I gave you my own. and because I was afraid you would not. Hear you at the door. Hear me at all. He stood very still. Mrs. Ashbourne. Your Grace. Why are you in my library? Because my father wrote, in the last week of his life, that the procedure had not failed in the way the world believed. Because he believed. He had reason to believe, I have read the reasoning, I have read it 20 times, that the second stage of the procedure was incomplete. Because he had begun to prepare a corrective. Because he never had the chance to bring it to you. Because I have spent 2 years finishing what he began, and a year practicing it. And because I cannot promise you that it will work, but I can promise you that it can be attempted with very little additional harm, and with the prospect, if it succeeds, of partial sight returning to the eye on which the original procedure was performed. Partial. Light. Shapes against light. Faces, if the room is bright enough and the face is close enough. He sat down, not in the chair behind the desk. In the chair second from the east end, the one he had told her to take, with the best light. He sat there for a long time. He did not speak. She did not either. Finally he lifted his hand to his face, to his right eye, the one she had said was newly bruised, and touched the eyelid with the pad of his middle finger. He held it there. He took the finger away. My cousin Cassian, he said, is arriving at this house on Friday afternoon, on an invitation extended yesterday by my sister, for a long weekend including Whitsun Sunday. He will dine with us 4 times. He will ride with me twice. He will write 3 letters from the desk at the south end of this library and ask me to sign them, and one of them will concern my proxy in the chamber. I shall not sign it. He will write to my mother, in the privacy of her sitting room, that I am no longer competent to refuse it. My mother will weep, because she loves me, and because she has been weeping over my eyes for 3 years, and is tired. By Tuesday morning I shall be on the verge of agreeing, because I shall be tired also. That is how this house has been managed for 36 months. Yes, Your Grace. You propose, in 3 days, to attempt a procedure devised by your father, on the eye your father blinded, in the hope that I shall walk into the chamber on the 2nd Tuesday of June and refuse my cousin in person. I propose, in 3 days, to attempt only the first stage. The drops are administered nightly for 6 nights. The corneal scarring is softened. The lens is not yet engaged. If you tolerate the first stage, the second stage, which is the procedure proper, may be considered. If you do not tolerate the first, we cease, and no further harm is done. There is no surgical incision in stage 1. There is only patience, and a single drop, twice a day, for 6 days. 6 days. Today's Wednesday. Cassian arrives Friday. Stage 1 will not be perceptible to an observer. Your cousin will see no change. Your father's drops. A board in the gallery above settled, the way old boards do. My father's drops, recompounded by Dr. McAllister to my father's last specification. Tested on the eyes of 3 patients who consented to the trial. None lost further sight. One, a glassblower from Newcastle who lost his vision in a furnace flash, recovered the use of his left eye to the degree that he resumed his trade. The Duke turned his face toward the south window. Mrs. Ashbourne, he said. Marwick. Selina. Selina, the widowed Mrs. Ashbourne. That is true. 5 years a widow. He was a clergyman. He was taken by a winter fever in the 3rd year of our marriage. There was no scandal. I have his letters of recommendation, which are honestly given. I am not an impostor in any way that matters. I am only my father's daughter, and my father did harm to you, and I have come to repair what I am able to repair. You are 8 and 20. 6 and 20. I am 8 and 20. Yes, Your Grace. He laughed, almost silently. It was the first sound she had heard him make that was not measured. Yesterday, he said, I told you that you were touching the face of a Duke of England without invitation. The dowager's bracelet caught the candlelight and threw it across the cloth. Yes, Your Grace. And then I said something that you have not repeated, even to my sister, who has asked you twice. She has asked me once, Your Grace. She has asked you twice. Once at dinner, once in the corridor afterward. I heard her. You heard her. I hear a great deal, Mrs. Ashburn. The house is quieter than people remember when they speak in it. He turned his head. You did not tell her? No, Your Grace. Why? Because what you said was not for her. What I said, he said carefully, was something I should not have said to a stranger. What you said, she answered, was the first thing you have said in 3 years, I think, that was not measured. I shall not repeat it. It is yours to say or to retract. He was silent. The silence was not a refusal. It was a man holding a cup and trying to decide whether to drink. Begin the drops tonight, he said at last. Yes, Your Grace. And Mrs. Ashbourne. Yes. My given name is Adrian. You will use it when we are alone, and Your Grace when we are not. I require both, for separate reasons. Yes, Adrian. Selina. Yes. Begin the drops tonight. She began the drops that night. She came to his apartments at 10:30, when the corridor was dark and the dowager had been in bed for an hour. She brought the small bottle stoppered with cork and sealed with red wax, a clean square of black silk to drape his shoulders, and the green notebook in which she would record the dose and the hour. She knocked once. He opened the door himself. He had taken off his coat and his cravat. The shirt beneath was open at the throat. The throat was strong, lined with the long muscle that ran from the jaw to the collarbone, and a single small scar showed there too. Not from her father's surgery, an older mark, perhaps a childhood injury. His sleeves were rolled to the forearm. The forearms were a man's forearms, not a swordsman's, not a labourer's, but a man who had been a horseman and a runner and a swimmer, and who had not yet allowed 3 years of indoor stillness to take that from him. Sit, he said, indicating a low chair before the fire. I have moved the screen. The light will be where you ask it. She sat. He sat opposite her, on a stool the height of her knee, his face turned up to the firelight. She had asked in the library for a ledger book, a candle, a clean basin, and a mirror. All 4 were on a small table at her elbow. The mirror was for her, not for him. Adrian. Yes. The drops will sting. I imagined as much. They will sting for perhaps 30 seconds in the first eye, less in the second, because the second eye will know what to expect. You will not see anything different at the end of tonight's session. You will not see anything different in the morning either. You may, by Saturday, see the candle flame as a halo rather than a smear. That is the whole of Stage 1's promise. Saturday. Saturday at the earliest. Friday is too soon. Friday is when my cousin arrives. Yes. Your father's drops. Yes. Begin. She tilted his chin up with her left hand and laid her right palm against his temple. He had shaved again that evening, bergamot. His pulse, beneath her fingers at the temple, was quick but steady. She drew the stopper from the bottle. The bottle held perhaps a teaspoon of clear fluid. She tilted it onto a small glass rod and dropped a single drop into the corner of his right eye. He did not flinch. He drew breath sharply through his teeth. 30 seconds, she said. 28, 27. Adrian. 26. You do not have to count. I prefer to. She kept her hand on his temple. The pulse was quicker now. She felt his jaw shift under her palm as he set his teeth. 20, he said, more quietly. 19. She did not move her hand. The fire made a small green snap behind her, a knot of pine resin going. She heard her own breath in her own ears. His eyelashes, dark, longer than she had imagined, were wet now from the drop. 10, he said. His voice was almost steady. Almost done. 5. 1. He let out his breath. She did not. Now the left, she said. Now the left. She moved her hand from his temple to his jaw, tilted his face the other way, and dropped the second drop. He did not count this one. He held very still. His left hand came up and closed, very gently, around her wrist. The same wrist he had taken yesterday in the study. The same gesture, but slower and without surprise. "Selina," he said, with his eyes still closed. "Yes." "You came here to repair what your father did." She heard her own breath in her own ears and counted it down. "Yes." "And not to be punished for it." "Not to be punished for it." "Good." She could not speak for a moment. "Open your eyes," she said when she could. "Let me see them." He opened his eyes. The clouded blue, the dark lashes still wet. The right eye, where the drop had gone first, was pinker than the left. His pupils, in the firelight, were larger than she had expected. They reacted to the candle she lifted to the side of his face. They reacted slowly, but they reacted. "Light still reaches the retina," she said. "Both sides. Good. Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Selina." She left the bottle, the silk, and the green notebook on the small table. She did not stay. Outside his door, in the dark corridor, she put her hand flat against the panel for the second time in 2 nights, and did not knock. Then she walked the corridor to her room, sat down at her writing desk, and wrote a letter to Dr. McAllister in Edinburgh that began, "He has tolerated the first dose. I shall write again on Saturday." She sealed the letter with red wax. She blew out the candle. She did not sleep until the small hours. The first 3 days of the drops moved slowly, the way the first days of any procedure moved slowly. Quietly, without obvious change. With the particular quiet of work that depends on patience for its result. Selina rose at 6, walked the south path beside the lake for 30 minutes, returned to the library at 7, and read aloud to the empty room for an hour to keep her voice in working order. At 9, she met the Duke in the library and read his correspondence to him for 3 hours. At noon, they took a cold luncheon together in the small saloon, the first time the Duke had taken a midday meal with another person in 3 years, although Selina did not yet know this, and the housekeeper, who had served the meal, did not say. At 1 o'clock, while the Duke went to the South Park with Honoria for an hour's walk, Selina returned to the library and worked through the second tier of the unopened correspondence. A stack of small, square letters from the Duke's tenants, set aside 2 winters before because the Dowager had been told they were inconsequential, contained between them a complete record of 3 flooded mills, 2 failed harvests, a cottager whose family had not been notified of a small annuity to which they had been entitled since 1819, and a lay reader at the village church who had been writing to the Duke with theological perplexity for the better part of 2 years and had not yet received an answer. Selina read each one aloud to herself, made a note in the green book, and stacked them in 3 piles. Urgent, urgent with money, urgent with time. By the 3rd afternoon, the urgent with time pile contained 11 letters, and the Duke, when she read it to him after dinner, said only that they would write back to all 11 the next morning, beginning at 6, and that Mrs. Henning would be told to bring tea at 5:30. The drops themselves she administered each evening at the time agreed. The procedure of the drops, which had been intricate and unfamiliar on the first night, became, by the 3rd, a kind of small private ritual the 2 of them shared without naming. He would be at the fire when she came in, his hair off his face, his shirt open at the throat, his shaving water cooling on the table. He would not greet her by name. He would say only, "Selina," in the particular tone he had begun to use when they were alone, which was different from the tone he used in front of his sister or his mother. She would say only, "Adrian," in the matching tone. She would tilt his chin. She would put her hand at his temple. She would drop the drop. He would breathe through his teeth for 30 seconds. She would not move. He would say, "Thank you," at the end. She would say, "Good night." She would leave the bottle and the silk and the notebook on the small table, and she would not stay. Twice on the third night, after she had left the apartments, she came back partway down the corridor and stood with her hand against the panel of his door. Both times she did not knock. The second time she heard, very faintly through the wood, the sound of the Duke moving across his bedroom. 3 even paces, a pause, 3 more, and she understood, with a small, painful clarity, that he was practicing walking the room without his cane, in the quiet hour before he slept, in case there was ever a morning when he would be permitted to walk into a sunlit room and take the hand of his wife without a stick of polished ash between her hand and his own. She did not knock the second time either. She walked the long way to her room, sat down at the writing desk, opened the green notebook, and wrote on a fresh page a sentence she did not show to anyone for 31 years. The sentence read, "He is practicing. The procedure is going to succeed, because he is already practicing for the world that comes after it." She closed the notebook. She blew out the candle. She slept. Lord Cassian Hawksmere arrived at Ravensmere Castle on Friday afternoon, driven from the village inn in a hired chaise, and crossed the gravel of the front drive at a walk that suggested he had practiced the walk on his way down. He was 29, fair-haired, very handsome. Handsome in the polished way that Selina had learned to mistrust before she was 19, and he wore a coat of sage green superfine that she suspected had cost him 3 months of his allowance. He kissed the dowager's cheek, kissed Honoria's cheek, bowed to Selina with a small, considering smile, and turned his face up to his cousin the Duke, as a man turns a hand toward a fire to test how much warmth is left in the coals. "Adrian, you look well." "Thank you, Cassian." "Truly well. Better than at Christmas." "I have been better fed since Christmas, I believe." "Have you?" Cassian did not press the point. He turned to Selina. "Mrs. Ashbourne, my cousin Honoria has written me about you. She praises your reading voice." His shoulders, beneath the dark cloth of his coat, did not rise. "Lady Honoria is generous." "A reading voice in a great house in May," Cassian said, in a tone that was light enough to be ignored if she chose. "What a charming idea. I had no notion my cousin had grown so contemplative." "You had every notion, Cassian," said Honoria, taking his arm. "Come and see the roses. Mamma has been waiting since Tuesday to walk you round them. She has rehearsed the ailing dahlia speech twice." "I should hate to deprive her." He went, with Honoria, down the broad gravel path, his sage-green back receding between the box hedges. The Duke, beside Selina, did not move for a moment after the others were out of earshot. "Selina." "Yes, Your Grace." "The drops tonight." "Yes." "After dinner. Not at 10:30. He will be looking for you at 10:30. "He does not know about the drops." "He will be looking for you in the corridor on a pretext. I will not have him in that corridor. After dinner, at 9, in the library." "In the library?" "In the library. I am not a fool. I am also not a coward." "Yes, Your Grace." "And, Selina." "Yes." "He will try to charm you tonight at table." "I imagined he would." "Permit it." "Adrian." "Permit it. Smile at his jokes. Refill his glass when the footman is slow. Let him believe you find him agreeable. If he believes that, he will speak in front of you." "You are using me." "I am asking you to allow yourself to be used. The choice is entirely yours. You may refuse, in which case you will dine quietly between my sister and my mother, and he will speak to you only in courtesies. You may accept. In which case, you will hear him say things he would not say if he believed you to be loyal to me. Adrian. Yes. I am loyal to you. I know. His blind eyes turned toward the receding sage-green coat. That is why I am asking you. She permitted it. She permitted it for 2.5 hours, through the soup and the partridge and the sweet course, and she did it well. She laughed at one of Cassian's jokes, the one about the bishop's hat at the consecration of St. Mary the Virgin in Hove, which was funny, she gave him that much. And she refilled his glass twice when the footman, to whom Honoria had spoken privately before dinner, was slow with the claret. She let her eyes go to Cassian's face when he spoke, and she let her smile come a half-second behind his, the way a younger sister's smile follows an elder brother's. She did not flatter him. She did not need to. The flattery was in the listening. By the cheese, Cassian was speaking past Selina, to the dowager, in the tone of a man who has stopped weighing his audience. "Mama," he said. He called the dowager Mama. Selina had not heard him do that before. "I had a letter last week from Dr. Pruitt of Harley Street." The dowager looked up from her plate. "Dr. Pruitt?" The light through the south window had moved an inch along the carpet. "You will remember him. He attended Adrian's eyes the second winter, after Marwick. He is in town. He says he would be very willing to call at Ravensmere and consult." "Cassian." "Mama, indulge me. The man is the foremost. Cassian, your cousin has heard quite enough opinions from Harley Street." "Has he? His sister says he has not seen a physician in 14 months. "His sister is correct. He has not. He has refused. The last consultation distressed him for a month. We do not—" "Mama, forgive me. But it has been 3 years." "Yes, my dear, I am aware." "And he is a duke." "Yes, Cassian." "And the chamber sits in 2 weeks." There was a beat of silence at the table. The dowager set her fork down very precisely on her plate. "What do you propose, Cassian?" "I propose that, if my cousin is not well enough to take his seat, I attend in his stead, with his proxy in writing. It is what families do." The Duke, at the other end of the table, lifted his glass and held it between his hands without drinking. "Cassian. Adrian. I shall take my own seat." "Of course you shall, when you are able." "On the 2nd Tuesday of June." "As you say." "In person." "Of course." "Cassian." "Yes, Adrian." "Pruitt of Harley Street is a fool. You know this. You knew it 3 years ago. You introduced him to my mother in the autumn after Marwick because you hoped he would tell her what he told her, which is that I was past helping. He said that, to my mother, in her sitting room, while I sat on the other side of the door. I have not forgotten." He set the glass down, very softly, on the cloth. "I shall not be examined by Pruitt. I shall not be examined by any of the gentlemen who came after Pruitt. Mrs. Ashbourne. The salt, please." She passed the salt. The dowager did not look at Cassian. She looked at her son. She looked at her son for a long moment, in which Selina understood with absolute clarity that the dowager had loved her son fiercely all his life, and had been told, year on year, that there was no further use in hoping, and had begun to listen to the telling. "Adrian, my dear," the dowager said, after the moment had passed. "The salt is on your left, 3 inches in front of your wine-glass, and Mrs. Ashburn is about to find it for you. Allow me to ring for the cheese." The cheese came. The cheese was eaten. Cassian smiled. Cassian did not raise the question again. After the meal, Cassian asked Selina, in the drawing-room, whether she would honour him with a turn in the long gallery. "I am to read to her grace, my lord." "Of course you are. Forgive me." He kissed her hand, with not quite the pressure of impertinence. He went away. At 9 o'clock, in the library, the Duke was at the south window again. The candles had been lit on the reading stand. The fire had been lit also, low. The bottle, the silk, the notebook, a fresh basin, and a fresh mirror waited on the small table beside the chair. "Sit," he said. "Both eyes tonight. Keep your hand at my temple. He left the drawing room 20 minutes ago. You will not knock at this door. My sister is sitting in the small saloon with his ear on the corridor." "His ear?" "My sister's ear. I am not a poet, Selina, and I am tired." She laughed once, quietly. She had not laughed since the dinner table. He turned his head at the sound of her laugh, and went still in the way she had begun to recognize. A man hearing something he had not heard in a long time, and refusing to lose track of it. She sat. She tilted his chin. She put her hand on his temple. She dropped the drops, one in each eye, in the order of the previous nights. He did not count. He held very still. When the second drop had been in for 30 seconds, and he had stopped breathing through his teeth, he said, very quietly, "Tell me what he said tonight, when I was eating cheese." "He told the dowager that he had written to Dr. Pruitt." "Yes. What else?" "He told her, in the saloon afterwards, while you were not there, that he believed you would not survive another bad winter without proper care. He said the word incapacity twice. He said the word guardianship once." The Duke's head did not turn. His eyes were closed against the drops. Guardianship. Once. "Selina." "Yes." "You heard him say guardianship?" "Yes. I was in the small saloon 5 paces behind your mother. He believed I had gone with Lady Honoria to fetch the music. I had not." "You had not?" "No." "Your loyalty," the Duke said, "is going to put my cousin out of a great deal of trouble he does not yet know he is in." She did not laugh at that. She did, however, tighten her hand a fraction at his temple. "Adrian." "Yes." "He intends, if you do not give him your proxy in the next 10 days, to apply to the Chancery for a writ of incapacity. He has the names of 3 physicians. Pruitt is the senior. He has asked them to be available between the 9th and the 18th of June. She kept her hands flat on the wood. "Has he?" "Yes." "Selina." "Yes." "Open your eyes for me." "My eyes are open, Adrian." "Yes, I had forgotten. Look at the candle on the table." "I am looking." "Lift the candle. Bring it to my face. Bring it close. Closer." She lifted the candle. She brought it within 6 inches of his right eye. "What do you see?" "I see," he said after a long pause, a smear. A bright smear. The shape of a flame. With the edges. There are edges." "Yes." "There were no edges last night." "No." He breathed out, very slowly, all the way out. Then he breathed in again, and his hand came up and caught her wrist, the wrist with the candle. "Selina." "Yes, Adrian." "Do not let him see this." "I shall not." "Do not let my mother see this." "I shall not." "Do not let my sister see this." "Yet." 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 "Yes, Adrian." She did not stay long that night either. Before she left, she set the candle down on the side table and turned to take up her notebook, and he caught her hand as she moved, the same hand, the same grip, and did not raise his face, did not raise his eyes, did not say anything for a moment. Then he said, "Thank you. Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Selina." She closed the library door behind her and stood in the corridor for a count of 6. Then she walked the long way to her room, the way that did not pass the Duke's apartments, and did not pass the suite given over to Lord Cassian Hawksmere either. In her room, she sat on the edge of the bed, took off her shoes, one at a time, and put both her hands flat on her knees. Her hands were not quite steady. "You are not in love with him?" she said aloud, to her own face in the dark glass of the window. You are not. You are repairing what your father did. You are not in love with him. The face in the window did not appear to believe her. She blew out the candle. The fourth drop, the fifth, the sixth, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, went the way the third had gone, only quieter. By Monday night, the Duke could see the candle as a flame, with a clear point and a clear halo, at 6 inches. By Tuesday morning, he could see her hand, when she held it against the south window of the library, as a moving shadow against the bright glass. He could not see her face. He could not yet see anything in low light. He could not read. He could not walk a corridor without his cane. The change was small, secret, and to Selina, who had read her father's notes 100 times, it was the precise change her father had predicted at the end of stage 1. Cassian remained at Ravensmere through Whitsun Sunday. He rode out twice with Honoria. He took his cousin out once, on a quiet bay mare led by a groom, to the lake at the bottom of the South Park. He played chess with the dowager and lost, twice, on purpose. He did not raise the proxy at table again. He did, at Sunday breakfast, mention in passing that Dr. Pruitt would be returning to town on the 11th. "How fortunate for Dr. Pruitt," said the dowager, "and how unfortunate for the 11th. Pass the marmalade, Cassian. The new gardener has put quince in it again." Cassian left on Tuesday morning. He kissed the dowager's cheek. He kissed Honoria's cheek. He bowed to Selina and pressed her hand a fraction longer than was strictly necessary. Mrs. Ashbourne. Lord Cassian. You read to my aunt very prettily. I should be charmed if, when next I am at Ravensmere, you would read something to me. Should you? Indeed. Lord Cassian, you have been most kind to me at table this week. I should not wish you to imagine. The smell of bergamot soap was very faint between them. Mrs. Ashbourne. He smiled, the polished smile. I imagine very little. I observe a great deal. Goodbye. He stepped up into the chaise. The chaise rolled away down the drive. The Duke, on the steps of the hall behind her, said quietly, He observes. Yes. What does he observe? That I am not in love with him. Yes. And that you may be in love with someone else in this house. She did not answer. Selina. Yes. Do not deny it. I shall not deny it. I shall not confirm it. We are at Ravensmere, and the post has arrived, and the 7th letter on the stand this morning is from your steward, and the 8th is from Pruitt, and the 9th is from a gentleman in the chamber who needs a letter from you by Friday, or your seat will be filled by a dispatch of 3 lines that you have not approved. I shall be in the library at 9. Selina. Your Grace. She walked into the house, and she did not turn around, and she walked to the library, and she sat down at the reading stand, and she read every letter in the pile, and at the end of the 7th, she had to put her face into her hands for a moment. And then she put her hands down and took up the 8th. She did not allow herself the luxury of thinking about what he had said until midnight. The drops stopped on the 7th night, as her father's notes prescribed. The eye was to rest for 2 days. On the 3rd day, stage 2 would be considered. Stage 2, the procedure proper, required the heroine to have a steady hand, a clean, small instrument, and the patient's complete trust. On the morning of the 3rd day, Selina was in the rose garden at 6 o'clock, walking off a sleepless night, when Lady Honoria found her. Mrs. Ashbourne. Lady Honoria. You have not slept? No. Mrs. Ashbourne, sit on the bench. I shall not stand and lecture you. Sit. Selina sat. Honoria sat beside her. The roses, the dowager's pride, were the reds and pinks of late May. Bourbon, damask, the pale climber the dowager called the apothecary. The bench had a cushion of lichen. The morning was cool. You are about to attempt the 2nd stage. Yes. My brother told me last night. He told you. He told me everything. The drops, your father's notes, the chancery writ, the proxy, Pruitt. He told me it at 11:15, in his apartments, with a glass of brandy in his hand and his eyes shut. And he asked me not to tell our mother yet. I shall not tell our mother yet. A footman passed in the corridor and was silent again. Thank you. Mrs. Ashburn, Selina. Yes. Are you going to do it? Yes. Are you afraid? Yes. Of failing? Of failing him, yes. Of succeeding also. Selina looked up. Honoria was not smiling. What do you mean? I mean, said Honoria carefully, that if you succeed, my brother will be a duke who can see again. He will go to London, he will sit in the chamber, he will, in due course, marry a duke's daughter, from one of 3 families my mother has been writing to since the autumn after Marwick. Are you willing for that? Lady Honoria, I am asking you a question, Selina, which I shall not ask twice. The reading stand creaked under the weight of the letter. Lady Honoria, I am repairing the harm my father did. I am not. I have not. I shall not confuse one for the other. I shall do the procedure. I shall succeed if I can. I shall leave Ravensmere when the 2nd stage is judged sound, and your brother no longer requires daily attention. Selina. Yes. My brother will require daily attention until he dies. Lady Honoria. He will. That is not a metaphor. The eye is fragile after stage 2. The drops continue twice a day for a year. The dressings change weekly. The light must be controlled. He will need a person in his house who knows what your father knew, and who knows what you know, and who is permitted by him into rooms where his eyes are uncovered. You propose, on the morning after a successful procedure, to leave that person's place vacant. She watched the corner of his jaw work once. I propose. You propose to leave him to his mother's London surgeons and his cousin's writs. Lady Honoria. My brother is in love with you, Selina. He will not say it to you. He will tell himself, after you are gone, that it was a duty obsession, and he will marry one of my mother's 3 young women, and he will be a perfectly competent duke, and he will be desperately unhappy. And he will be unhappy, precisely because he will not let himself ask for what he wanted, because he believed he was not allowed to ask. Do you understand me? Selina did not answer. The apothecary rose, a few feet away, had a single bee in it that was working slowly through the flower, methodically. I am telling you these things, Honoria continued, because I have watched my brother for 3 years be told what he is allowed to want, and I am tired of it, and I am tired on his behalf. If you do not love him, Selina, I shall send you back to Edinburgh tonight with the 2nd stage undone, because what he needs more than sight is a person who is honest with him. If you do love him, and you will not say it because you believe you have not earned it, I shall leave you in the rose garden to determine what to do next. I shall not tell you what to do. I shall tell you only that the morning after the procedure is the worst possible morning to be honourable on his behalf, without his consent. She rose from the bench. She did not look at Selina again. She walked back up the gravel path between the box hedges. The bee continued in the rose. Selina sat on the bench for a long time. When she rose at last, she did not go to the house. She walked the rose path to the South Park, took the path along the lake, and walked the long way round through the wood, and came back into the castle by the south entrance, where the Duke was waiting on a stone bench beside the door, with his cane between his knees and his face turned toward the path she had come in on. You walked the lake. I walked the lake. My sister has been to see you. Your sister has been to see me. What did she say? He did not move at all for the count of 5. She said, Selina answered after a long pause. That I was about to be honourable in a very foolish way, on your behalf, without your consent. Was she right? Yes. Selina. Adrian. Sit. Beside me. There is room. She sat. The stone was cold through her skirt. Her hand was on the bench between them. She did not move it. Selina. Yes. The procedure tomorrow. Yes. You said the second stage is to be considered, not necessarily attempted. Considered, yes. What is the consideration? Whether the eye has tolerated stage 1, whether the patient's hand, your hand, is steady on the morning of stage 2, whether the practitioner, my hand, is steady, whether the room is ready, whether the patient understands and consents. Her pulse was slower than she expected it to be. All 4 of these are yes. The patient must understand also that, having attempted stage 2, the practitioner does not leave the patient until his eyes are healed. Yes. That is a year, Adrian, at minimum. Yes. In your house. Yes. As what? As your reader? As my wife, Selina. She did not breathe. Adrian. Yes. You are asking. I am asking, on a stone bench at 9:30 in the morning, with my cane between my knees and my eyes still half useless, the woman whose father blinded me, and whose hands have given me back the difference between a candle and a wall, whether she will marry the man whose face she touched without invitation on the 3rd minute of their acquaintance. Yes, I am asking. Selina, look at me. I cannot see you, but I shall hear it if you turn your head away. Have you turned your head? No. Are you crying? A little. Why? Because I have been waiting to be told to leave since Wednesday afternoon. Selina. Yes. I have been waiting since Wednesday afternoon to be told that I was not allowed to ask. I shall not be told that, by you, or by my mother, or by the chamber. I am a Duke of England without invitation, and I have asked. Answer. Yes, Adrian. Yes. Yes, Adrian. He put his hand over hers on the stone bench. He did not lift it. He did not move closer. He did not turn her face. He sat beside her in the morning sun on the stone bench beside the south entrance of his own house, and held her hand, and breathed. After a long while he said, Stage 2 on Friday. We shall be married on Saturday. My mother will be furious. Adrian. Yes. Stage 2 on Friday. Yes. In the library at 6 in the morning, when the light from the south window is at its best. Yes. And the wedding on Saturday. Where? In the chapel here, with the vicar, with my sister. Without my mother, if she refuses to come, which she will not refuse to come once she has been furious for 3 days and has slept on it. With a special license which I shall procure on Thursday by sending Honoria to London tonight on the night mail. The May air through the open casement smelled of cut grass and stone warmed by the sun. Adrian. Yes. Your cousin will hear of this within the fortnight. Yes. He will write to the Chancery within a week of hearing. He will. He will assert that I was not competent to consent. He will assert that you were not a fit person to be married to a duke. He will produce Pruitt and Pruitt's 2 friends. He will produce the report of what your father did to my eyes. He will produce, very probably, a sworn affidavit from a former servant of this house that I have been incapable for 2 years. And on the 2nd Tuesday of June, I shall be in the chamber, in my seat, with my wife in the public gallery, and I shall vote against the enclosure of common lands in Sussex, and I shall do it in person, and Cassian's writ will be a piece of paper a clerk did not bother to file. That is what we shall do. Selina. Yes, Adrian. Selina. Yes. Marry me on Saturday. Yes, Adrian. On Saturday. He turned his face toward her at last, and lifted her hand from the bench, and pressed it to his cheek, the way she had pressed her hand to his cheek on Wednesday afternoon. He held it there. He closed his eyes, which she now believed were beginning, very faintly, in the strongest light, to see again. Mine, he said, very quietly. I said it on Wednesday. I have not retracted it. You said it without invitation. I said it because it was true. I shall say it again on Saturday, in front of the vicar, with rings, and you will say it back. Selina. He turned his face a fraction toward the sound. Yes. Mine. Yes, Adrian. Stage 2, on Friday morning at 6 o'clock, was the longest 40 minutes of Selina's life. She had practiced the procedure 12 times in Edinburgh on glass eyes, and twice on the eyes of a recent decedent provided by Dr. McAllister for that purpose. She had not practiced it on the man she was to marry the next morning. She had not practiced it knowing that her own breath, if it caught, could mark his cornea with a scar. She did not let her breath catch. She had laid out the room the night before. The library at 6 in the morning was filled with the south light, soft and sloped, that her father had specified. The reading table had been moved against the south window. A linen cloth lay across it, pinned at the corners. A second cloth, smaller, was rolled by his head. A small basin of clean water, 2 clean cloths, the bottle of post-procedural drops, a single instrument the size of a hairpin, polished to a mirror, lay in a row. The Duke was on the table. He wore a clean shirt, open at the throat, and nothing else but a wool blanket from the waist down. His hair was off his face. His sister stood at the foot of the table in a stable-hands apron, with the strings doubled around her waist, holding Selina's spare instruments. The dowager had not been told. Adrian. Yes? Before I begin, tell me you understand what is to happen. I understand that for the next 40 minutes you will work on my right eye with a small instrument. I understand that I shall not be able to see anything during the procedure, even if my right eye were at its best, because it will be held open and bright light will be shone into it, and this is necessary. I understand that I shall feel pressure but not pain, because the drops you administered an hour ago have numbed the surface. I understand that you will speak to me through the procedure. I understand that I am to lie still. I understand that if anything goes wrong, you will stop, and we shall be no worse off than we were on Wednesday. She did not move her hand from the table. Good. Selina. Yes. Begin. She began. She did not look at his face, except where his eye was. She did not let herself think about his hand, which lay on the cloth beside her hip, palm open. She did not let herself think about Saturday. Honoria, at the foot of the table, did not speak unless spoken to, and Selina spoke to her 3 times, for the second instrument, for the fresh cloth, for the second drop. The morning was very quiet. A blackbird sang in the South Park. A clock, somewhere in the house, struck the half-hour, and then the 3/4, and then the hour. At 41 minutes, by Honoria's watch, Selina set her instrument down. She wiped her eye, not his, with the back of her wrist. She bandaged his right eye with the prepared cloth. It is done. Selina. Yes. Tell me what you saw. The lens is repositioned. The scarring along the inferior margin is softened. The cornea took the procedure cleanly. The eye will be bound for 3 days. After 3 days you will see, in your right eye, in good light, more than you have seen in 3 years. It will not be the sight you had at 5 and 20. It will be enough to read in good light, with a glass, It will be enough to see your wife's face in front of you in a sunlit room. It will be enough." He did not speak for several seconds. "Honoria." "Yes." "Bring me her hand." "Adrian," Selina began. "Bring me her hand, Honoria." Honoria brought her sister-in-law's hand, gently, around the table to her brother's. The Duke closed his hand around Selina's. "Honoria." "Yes." "Go and tell Mamma. Now. Now. Tell her I shall marry Mrs. Ashbourne tomorrow morning at 11. Tell her I have told her last. And I have told her last because I knew she would weep, and I wished her tears to be on the day after the procedure, rather than the day before. Tell her I am very sorry for the order of the telling, but not for the doing. Tell her I shall see her at 8:30. Selina, you will not see her this morning. You will go to bed. You have not slept since Tuesday." "Adrian." "Yes." "You have not slept since Tuesday either." "True. Honoria, go." Honoria went. The library was empty but for the man on the table and the woman beside him. The south light through the cloth-pinned window was clear and clean. "Selina." "Yes?" "On Saturday, I shall not be able to see your face. The bandage will be on for 3 days." "I know. I have waited 3 years to see a face. I shall wait 3 more days." "Yes, Adrian." "On Tuesday morning, when the bandage comes off." "Tuesday morning." "On Tuesday morning, in the south light of the library, you shall be the first thing I see in 3 years." She did not trust her voice. She squeezed his hand. "Now go to bed," he said. She went. The wedding, on Saturday morning at 11 o'clock in the chapel of Ravensmere Castle, was the smallest wedding the Dowager Duchess of Ravensmere had ever attended, and she was not, in fact, furious for 3 days. She was furious for 2 hours, and grieving for 1, and weeping for 10 minutes, and then quiet, the way her son had taught her to be. And at 9:30 on Saturday morning, she had presented Selina with a small velvet box, containing a wedding ring of plain gold and a sapphire pin shaped like a forget-me-not. And she had said, "It was my mother's. You will wear it. You will be a good wife to my son, or I shall cut your throat in your sleep." Which is what mothers say when they have stopped being able to think of any other useful thing. Selina had embraced her. The Dowager, who did not embrace, had held her for nearly 20 seconds before stepping back. "Yes," the Dowager had said. "Well, the vicar is at 11. In the chapel, the Duke wore a black coat and a white linen bandage on his right eye that the vicar was given to understand had been the result of a small accident with a horse. Honoria held the rings. Selina wore the Duke's mother's ring, the sapphire pin, and a gown of cream silk borrowed from Honoria's wardrobe and altered overnight by the housekeeper who, on Wednesday afternoon, 4 days previously, had stood in the Duke's study door and made a sound like a woman watching a vase fall. The vicar said the words. Selina said her part. The Duke said his. When it came to the moment of the vow, and the Duke was to repeat after the vicar, "With this ring I thee wed," he repeated it, and then he added, very quietly, into the silence after the vicar's voice and before Selina's voice, "And mine." The vicar paused. The vicar was young. The vicar had not, in his 7 months at Ravensmere, married a man with a bandage on one eye. He decided, sensibly, to continue. The Duke pressed the ring onto Selina's finger. Selina pressed the ring onto the Duke's finger. The vicar pronounced them man and wife. The Duke turned, in the bright south light of the chapel, where his ancestors had been blessed for 4 generations, took his wife's face in both his hands, the way she had taken his on Wednesday afternoon, and kissed her once on the mouth. Slowly enough that Honoria coughed, and the Dowager said audibly, "Really, Adrian?" And the vicar discovered something interesting on the floor. When he lifted his face, the Duke said, "Mine," in front of the vicar, with rings. The candle on the side table guttered and steadied. Yes, Adrian. And yours. Yes, Adrian. Yours. Yes. That was Saturday. Sunday, the Duke and his wife dined alone with the dowager in the small dining room. The dowager spoke for an hour about her late husband's roses. The Duke held his wife's hand under the table for the full hour. The dowager, who had been a duchess longer than her son had been alive, pretended not to notice for the first 20 minutes, and then pretended to notice, and then said, after the third course, "You are like your father, Adrian, who held my hand under the table at Lady Wickham's dinner 6 weeks after our wedding, because he did not believe a duke was permitted to do so in public," and was silent for the rest of the meal. Monday. Selina did not leave her husband's apartments, except to walk in the rose garden with Honoria for an hour. Monday night, the Duke slept properly for the first time in 3 years, with his wife's hand against his cheek and his right eye bandaged on the pillow. Tuesday morning, at 6 o'clock in the south light of the library, Selina removed the bandage from her husband's right eye for the first time in 4 days. She had set the room as she had set it for the procedure. The table moved, the cloth pinned, the cool basin, the clean cloths. She had not slept. She did not pretend she had slept. She had eaten 3 biscuits and taken a cup of weak tea. The Duke, on the table, was clean-shaven and his hair was off his face. His left eye was closed. His right eye was about to be uncovered. Adrian. Yes. It will sting when the air reaches it. I imagined as much. Outside the south window, a wood pigeon called once and stopped. It will be very bright. The bandage has been on for 4 days. You will not see anything for the first 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, you will see the bright window and shapes against the bright window. I shall be in front of the bright window. I shall be the first shape you see. Yes. Adrian. Yes. If it has not worked, and you cannot see, then I am the husband of a brilliant practitioner who tried the impossible thing on me, and I am alive, and I have had the woman I love in my bed for 3 nights, and I have a vote in the chamber on Tuesday, and I shall not pretend that not seeing is worse than being alone in the dark with no one. Adrian. Begin, Selina. She began. She loosed the linen at his temple. She lifted the pad. She set the pad aside on the cloth. The eye was closed, the lashes resting. She wet a cloth from the basin and washed the eye, gently, the way her father's notes specified. She dried it. She stepped back so that her own body would not block the south light. Open your right eye. He opened it. He did not, for the first 30 seconds, see anything. She watched the right eye open. She watched the pupil contract, sluggishly at first, then more cleanly. She watched the right eye blink. She watched it blink twice more. Adrian. Selina. Where am I? You are. He stopped. He did not breathe for a moment. You are between me and the south window. You are. His voice broke and steadied. You are the shape of a woman in a cream gown. That was the gown on Saturday. With Selina, your hair is not as I imagined. Tell me. It is the color of, I do not know the word for it. The color of corn at. A clock somewhere in the house struck the quarter. At harvest. Yes, at harvest, with the firelight in it. It is dark gold, Adrian. Yes. Adrian. I cannot see your face. Not yet. You are too far away. The window is too bright. I see the shape of your chin. I see the line of your shoulder. I see your hand at your side. Come closer to the window." He sat up. He swung his legs down. He stood. He took a step. He took two. He stopped 2 paces from her, his right eye open, his left eye closed, his face turned toward her. "Closer," he said. "Closer." She came. She closed the distance between them. She stopped 6 inches from his face. "Selina." "Yes." "Now." She did not say anything. The south light was full on her face. He looked at her. He looked at her for what she would later learn was nearly 2 minutes. He did not speak. He did not blink. He did not move. At one point his right hand rose to touch her cheekbone, and stayed there, and his thumb moved once across the skin beneath her eye. Then he closed his right eye again, and opened it, and looked at her again, as though he could not believe the second look would still find her there. "Selina." "Yes." "I love you." "I love you, Adrian." "I have loved you since Wednesday afternoon at 4 o'clock, when you put both your hands on the face of a Duke of England without invitation and told me I had walked into a doorframe." "You had walked into a doorframe." "Yes." "Adrian." "Yes." "Mine." "Yes." She smiled. The smile reached her eyes. He saw the smile reach her eyes. He saw it. "Mine," he said again, very softly, the way a man says a word that he has been saving for a very long time and can at last say aloud in the bright morning light. "Mine. And yours. From Wednesday afternoon at 4 o'clock in the study until the year of our Lord 28, when whoever among us is the elder closes the eyes of the other for the last time, on a Tuesday morning, in good light, with whatever children we have had between us standing in the south doorway, and not weeping yet, because there will be time enough for weeping later." "Selina." "Yes, Adrian." "You may kiss me now." She kissed him. On the 2nd Tuesday of June, at 1:30 in the afternoon, the 8th Duke of Ravensmere walked unaided into the chamber of the House of Lords, with a glass in his right pocket, which he did not require, and took his seat. He listened to the reading of the enclosure bill. He stood when the question was put. He spoke for 4 minutes. He spoke against the bill. He named 3 tenants, by name, who would lose their commons. He named the cost to each of them in pence per week. He sat down. The bill was defeated by 11 votes. In the public gallery, his wife, 26, in a gown of indigo silk, with her dark gold hair gathered at the nape of her neck and a sapphire pin shaped like a forget-me-not at her throat, watched her husband sit down, and did not weep, because Honoria, on her right, would have made an observation about it that she did not wish to provoke. She closed her eyes for a moment instead. When she opened them, Lord Cassian Hawksmere was standing on the floor of the chamber in a sage-green coat, looking up at her, with the expression of a man who has just realized that the Chancery clerk in his employ, on the 11th of June, will not be required after all. He bowed. She inclined her head. He left the chamber by the south door before the Duke did. 6 months later, on the morning of the first hard frost in November, the 9th child of the village schoolmaster of Ravensmere, a boy of 7 who had been losing the sight of his left eye since spring, and who had been brought to the castle on the Duchess's instruction by his father, who could not pay a London surgeon, sat on a low stool in the south light of the library, while the Duchess of Ravensmere washed his eye with a clean cloth, and the Duke read aloud from a green notebook the precise dose of the drop she was about to administer. "Adrian." "Yes, my love?" "Read it again. I want to be certain of the second figure." 1 drop in the affected eye, twice a day, for 6 days. 6 days. 6 days. And the boy's name? Tom. Tom Wakefield. He is 7 years old. His father is the schoolmaster. His mother is the dowager's seamstress. He has lost the sight of his left eye since the 1st of April, He is brave, and he counts when it stings. I count too, Tom said firmly. Yes, said the Duke gravely. I imagine you do, Tom Wakefield. I counted also the first time. 28, 27, 26. It works. The fire shifted in the grate. Adrian. Yes, my love. Hold his hand. The first drop is the worst. The Duke crossed the library, knelt by the stool. A Duke of England kneeling on a library carpet by a schoolmaster's son, and took Tom Wakefield's small hand in his large one. 28, he said. 28, said Tom. 27, said the Duke. The Duchess dropped the drop. Tom Wakefield, who was 7 and brave and counting, did not flinch. He held the Duke's hand. He counted to 1. The Duke's right eye, in the south light from the library window, watched his wife's hands, the hands she had laid on his face on a Wednesday afternoon 18 months before, without invitation, in a room full of dust gold in May light. Work the way her father had taught her, and the way she had taught herself, and the way she would, in the end, teach more than 200 patients in the course of a long life. Yours, the Duke said very quietly, so that only she heard. Yours, she answered. The apothecary rose, in the south garden of Ravensmere Castle, was already cut back for winter. A blackbird sang somewhere in the bare hedge. The fire in the library had been laid, and was not yet lit, and would be lit in due course, by a footman who had been instructed, one Wednesday afternoon 18 months before, to bring tea to the library at 4:30 every afternoon for as long as Mrs. Ashbourne, by then the Duchess of Ravensmere, was in residence, which was, as it happened, every afternoon for the remainder of his employment, and his sons' sons. Selina set the cloth back in the basin. There, she said to Tom. 1 down, 5 days to go. Were you brave? I counted, said Tom. You counted, said the Duke. That is the bravest thing of all. Selina. Yes, Adrian. Mine. Yours. The south light moved across the library carpet. The blackbird stopped, and started again. The clock struck the hour. She touched his face once more that morning, while the boy was watching, and the boy did not understand what he was watching, and the Duchess of Ravensmere thought, as the south light caught the dust between her hand and her husband's cheek, that she had not understood it either, 3 years ago, in Bedford Square, when she had folded her father's last letter and put it in the leather case that had brought her, by way of a study door and a vase that did not fall, to the morning room of a great house in Sussex, where her hands were no longer afraid. If you have ever walked into a room full of strangers and put your hands on the one face you were most afraid to touch, because it was the one that needed to be touched, then you know already what kind of story this was. Pull your chair closer to the fire. The kettle is on. There will be another, next week, of the same kind.